Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of our weekly Rashi study class, Megillat Esther, with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz.
So we are going to jump right in, and then we're going to also meet on Monday. So we're going to have a very short window between the two classes, which is lovely. I think we're good. Thanks, Hector. Okay, so we are at verse 4, if I am not mistaken. But what I want us to do, because we're kind of in the middle of a scene here, what I want us to do is just to read verse 3 and then read verse 4 with it. So whoever chooses to read verse 4, I just want us to read verse 3 into verse 4, if that makes sense. You don't have to read verse 3 in both Hebrew and English if you don't want to, but whoever chooses to read, let's go one into the other. Someone want to take us into verse 4?
Okay. Back to 3?
No, it's okay. We'll just read verse 4.
Do you want me to translate 3? Or
no, it's okay. We can just, we read verses before we knew that you all weren't hearing us. We were reading verse 3 so that we could get into verse 4. So now we're going to get to verse 4. We're going to do the Hebrew and the English.
V'hi kamram elav yom v'yom v'lo shama alehem v'yagidu lahaman lirot hayamdu divrei Mordechai ki higid lahem asher hu Yehudi. Okay, and then I'm not sure about the Amram, but I know what you're going to say is they said to him every day, day after day. What they said to him is referring to what they said to him in verse 3. Mm-hmm. They were questioning, why are you going against the king's commandment? Mm-hmm. So they repeated that day after day, and he didn't listen to them. And so the courtiers, told to Haman, in order to see if the words of Mordechai would stand, because he had told them that he was a Jew.
Okay. Any questions? So just for those of you who are on Zoom and potentially not looking at this exact source sheet, the verse right before, is we're talking about the king's courtiers. So when it's in plural, that's the plural that we're talking about. And they're saying to Mordechai, why do you disobey the king's orders? So when Larry was pointing out that they're speaking to him about this day after day, that's what they're speaking to him about, as Larry mentioned. I just wanted you to see that it was also in the Megillah, the verse before. Thoughts, comments, questions? I have many, so if no one else has any, I'm happy to share. Stevie seems to have one, but doesn't have a microphone. Rachel, do you mind passing the microphone to your son? Thank you so much. Yeah. There we go.
Why do you look so familiar?
Okay, Stevie, question.
Or
comment.
Well, several oddities.
Yeah.
First, I'll just point out that I don't know if it's in these books, but it's not here. But Belram and Kilram are a creative going on. Doesn't really change.
Explain to us what the Korean Ketiv is.
The written text versus the vocalized text.
Good. And which one is which in this?
I don't actually know.
So then, great.
Every time I lane it, I always just know that to do different than what it shows.
Yeah. So according to this version of the Megillah, because Stevie's right that sometimes it's not as clear, but according to the one that I have in front of me, which is just a random edition, I was going to try to see if it was associated with anybody in particular, but it's not. The Ketiv is Be'amram and the Kri is Ke'amram. So meaning what was potentially written down was with a bet Amram in his sayings or in that which was being said. But what we say out loud when we're reading the Megillah to others, right, as opposed to just either reading it to ourselves or understanding the original transcript, we would say ke Amram, as if or like.
And for what it's worth, the Talmud very insistently says that the vocalized version should take precedence for any halachic purpose. But moving on, if he doesn't listen to them, then how is it that he told them an answer? And what kind of answer is this?
Who's the he?
Mordechai.
Okay, great.
And what kind of answer is it? Is it perhaps Haman that said that he's a Jew? But also, how is he a Judean if he's from Benjamin? Okay,
so Stevie just brought up a whole bunch of questions. The final question that he brought up is that, he said, how is he a Yehudi if he's a Benjaminite, right? Which is an interesting way of us knowing our history, that Yehudi came not from Benjaminites but from Judah. Yeah, exactly. That being said, when we think of Yehudi, we don't necessarily tribalize. Is that a word? Okay, great. According to Larry, it's a word. So tribalize that any longer, obviously. But back in the day, it was very important that we understood that meant that you were from from Judah. Lineage is the word I was looking for. The other thing that's really interesting that that Stevie did not say, but yeah.
What is going on
there? Say that again?
Just to see if Mordechai's words would be substantiated,
right,
is like a weird.
Good. So we're gonna talk about that in a second. The idea of the word "seen" really doesn't make so much sense here. Maybe hearing or understanding or figuring out or waiting to. Yeah, I don't know. But "seen" is a bizarre word to be used here. The other thing that I was going to say about the Yehudi part is, didn't we just have a whole thing where we were talking about how Esther was very much not sharing her identity, and wasn't that coming from Mordechai, the guy who it seemingly is just very quick to say, by the way, I'm Jewish. So it just seems like a very interesting dissonance between those two characters, yet he's telling Esther to do one thing for certain reasons. She's inside the palace, right? And he's actually doing exactly the opposite of what he's told her because of a ruling against what's going on, not necessarily outside the palace, but outside of where Esther has access to. Norm, hold on one second. There was a hand over here first. I just don't remember who it was. No? Oh, okay. Norm, go ahead. I thought I saw another hand.
Ma'am Louise suggests that they reported Mordechai because they were hoping to use him as a test case. There were many who did not like having to bow down and prostrate before Haman, not just Jews. And that's why the king had to make a special order that people should bow down before Haman, because there was resistance to it. And they were hoping to use Mordechai as a test case. If Mordechai could get away without bowing down and prostrating, then presumably others also would be able to do that.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for that commentary. Other thoughts or questions? Yeah, Paul. Oh, no. Not a voice. Not a hand.
Since you're insisting, I want to go back to Stevie's point, and maybe there's a simple answer. What's the difference between Be Amram and Ki Amram? Since they're both simply prepositions, and we all know the prepositions don't translate.
Right.
And so it would be whatever preposition you want. So in this case, it'd be with the saying, or why, when they were saying.
Yeah.
So I don't see why it was even had to be corrected.
Well, I'm not sure that it had to be corrected. I think you are correct that neither neither preposition is really helping us with the understanding, because the word amram is really just allowing us to understand what was going on there. I think it had more to do with the fact that it was probably unclear which letter it was, because when a bet and a kaf are written, they look so similar. So I think it had less to do with meaning and more to do with just they weren't really sure. And so in terms of the Kri and the Ketiv, I think it probably is just that they chose the one that made the most sense in terms of understanding, but not necessarily because they were so sure that that meaning was correct, but or that the writing was correct. Yes, Stevie?
Respond to that usually, or these kinds of things, creatives, are when the meaning is indistinguishable, because like you should always think of the Kriya as just like another, text manuscript that you found in some archaeological site or something, that like there's a small textual variation happened to exist and it just got recorded in a verbal way. But like there's before the printing press, and for that matter before them, even before that, before the Masoretes, right, like there wasn't necessarily a standardized version, so there were different versions floating around.
Yeah, you're never going to see a Ketiv, a Kri or Ketiv that's like two completely different words.
Oh, we will in a couple of weeks, Parsha, but it's pretty
A completely
rare.
different word? Which one?
In the Tochacha in Kitava.
It's a completely different word.
Yeah.
It has none of the same letters.
Like the rabbis didn't like hemorrhoids or something, so they.
Oh, okay. Well, that's okay.
Different word.
Great. Great. I have no idea what that case is, but typically when you see it, if you see it in the Tanakh, or if you see it in the Talmud, it's typically because it's the what's the word? Like when you can't tell what something says. Yeah, no, I see that. Yeah, there's ambiguity of the text. You're not clear what the actual word was. The dissecting of the different letters might not have been as clear. So I don't know what this Tochacha example is. That seems like an oddity, but it's typically going to be something like this. Okay, Rick, and then Diane, then Rebecca, and then Barry.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Is my understanding that the Ketiv was a mistake, and one example I remember is La and Lo with a Lamed Hey and Lamed Vav. You're supposed to read it low, even though it looks like La. Things like that, because if you pronounce it wrong, then you're doing a different word.
Right.
The one about where an entire word, it was ravished instead of raped, or slept with instead of raped, and it's where the entire word is different. But generally,
Right.
I thought that there was a mistake in the text, and the rabbis came along and said, "Hey, there's a mistake there. We're going to record in the Masoretic notes, the Masorah, the tradition. We're going to record the way it should be read. That's the Kri." So for some reason, the mistake was Bit Amram, and they didn't like that, and so they put a little asterisk on it, and they said, "No, you're supposed to do Kit Amram, and you're not supposed to do both." I saw that in the Luach that's printed every year. You're just supposed to run with the Kri pronunciation and not do both. But there's a bunch of them here in the Megillah. I don't know why. So Bit Amram is in their telling, and Kit Amram is like. I don't know, but for some reason the rabbis didn't like the bet, which was a mistake in their eyes, and so they said, "Hey, we got to make sure everybody knows it should have been a kaf."
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's good for us to remember that, like, what does it mean that something was a mistake, right? That's just someone's interpretation that it was a mistake. Like, we have no idea what was a mistake and what was intentional, because when we ended up with text, it looked a certain way, but if it if we didn't think that that word existed, that's just our own interpretation. That doesn't mean that it was actually a mistake. So yes, I think often when we see edits or annotations, so to speak, we can think of it as a way that the rabbis felt a need to imply either a different meaning or a different word based off of their understanding. But again, who knows? I mean, it's unclear to us what it was supposed to be, because we weren't there when it was written down and before it was written down and it was being told. Okay, Diane, Rebecca, Barry.
I don't think so. Okay. So 2 things.
Okay. Shh.
So the first thing is, this is an incredibly confusing sentence.
Yes. Good.
It's filled with all these pronouns.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded when I was teaching English, when you're teaching non-native speakers and you have to teach them how to refer from the pronoun back to the noun that it modifies.
Yeah.
And you can do this and it makes logical sense, but there's an awful lot of he's and hims and thems and theys
Good.
in this sentence. So the structure is confusing.
Good.
And the other thing is, why did they have to tell Haman anything? Haman was there and clearly would have seen Mordecai bowing or not bowing down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they were tattling. Yeah. It's weird.
Yeah. So I was reading, that was one of my questions as well. And I was reading, by the way, to go back to the pronoun thing just for a second, that's why I wanted us to read the third verse, because I thought it was going to help a little bit with us understanding those very ambiguous pronouns in this verse. But I had the same question about the Haman piece in terms of why did they need to tell him? And I was actually looking. I now don't remember who it was, so I'm sorry that I can't give credit where credit is due. But there was something about that this idea of them speaking day after day was that they were trying to break him almost. And so then the going to Haman was them saying like, and this might be where the midrash that Norm shared with us earlier comes from, that they weren't able to break him. And so then they went and they told him, actually Mordecai is not going to be bowing down to you. And the reason for that is that because he eventually told him that he was a Jew. That puts a lot of narrative into a sentence that we get none of. But I just, in terms of your question, I think it's a really good one, and one that also reminds us that even within one sentence, time has passed in a way that is not indicated here. So the day after day piece, how many days, how long was that? At what point did he tell them that he was Jewish? Right. So yes, Haman probably initially saw it, but then at what point did he need to be told, like, this really isn't going to happen for this guy? Okay, Rebecca.
I have more of a question.
Yeah.
About going back to the word Yehudi.
Yeah.
Because I know that later it shows up as Yehudim, and
yeah,
it feels like it might be the first time that term is used, really, for Jews.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, A, if we know if it's the first time, and B, like in the Bible, in general, and but in Megillat Esther, that's the first, and whether that helps chronologically time the manuscript to know when it was written.
I'm sure the answer to that second piece is yes. I don't know for a fact, but I'm sure that anytime terminology starts to be used in a way that it wasn't used before, it definitely indicates for us, when something was written, because if other people were using that same term, then it must have been written during that time, or else that term wouldn't have been used. I don't know for a fact, but I believe it is the case that this is the first time that the term in that way is used, in a way that we would understand it to be used as Jew, rather than just a person from Judah, which was, I think it was Stevie's question, right? That now we're actually changing that terminology to go with your question about timing, right? We're using it in a way that is different than it may have been used when indicating that they were from the tribe of Judah. So as I've said many times before, I am not great with dates, so I don't know for sure, that things lined up on a timeline in the way that you're suggesting, but I think we can infer from it that it must have, because we were now using those terms in a different way. Barry.
So the use of the word Yehudi, one is a Jew is commanded not to bow down before idols, and Haman was presenting himself as an idol to be worshipped. The other is that as a Benjamite Yehudi, his Mordechai's ancestor Shaul failed to kill Agag, and Haman, being a descendant of Agag, as a Benjamite, Mordechai truly was not able to bow down to Haman. And so that there's a resolve here of him not being able to do this, and it will read forward as what happens because of his resolve.
So the second piece is definitely possible in terms of historical understanding. I don't know that we ever get evidence of that, but it is an interesting idea in terms of understanding who we come from and the history that we come from, and therefore how it results in the generation that we are living in. Your first point was a very interesting one that I hadn't thought of, and it goes to Rebecca's point that this idea that as the reader, we know as Jews, as Yehudim, we are not to bow to idols because we know the 10 Commandments and we know our halacha. Interestingly, if the word Yehudi was used here, is that being used here for us to recognize time, place, knowledge of what it meant to be a Jew differently at this point of Megillat Esther than other parts of our canon? I hadn't thought about that, but it's a very interesting way of us connecting current knowledge, or not even current like 21st century, but knowledge post rabbinic writings, right, to understand that we would have this knowledge that someone who was a Yehudi could not do this, and therefore the word is being used so that it could be inferred that, of course, if he said that, it made all kinds of sense. Leonard, before Rick had his hand up for a long time, and then Leonard, Diane, Rachel, Marshall.
Hi. Well, I had to look for the next time there was a mistake or there was a Masoretic note.
Glad we can get back to this. Yeah.
In chapter 4,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
It only relates to Yehudim. Okay, that's
Okay,
the
great.
only reason I'm really bringing it up. So chapter 4, verse 7.
Yeah.
You've got by Yehudim, and it's got 2 yuds after the daled. Yehudiyim, and you're not supposed to pronounce it that way. So the Masoretic note on the bottom is you have an extra yud, and you shouldn't read it. You shouldn't read it any other way, but instead of by Yehudim. It's just It's just
and right
easy...
before that in verse 4, also there's one.
Yes, vatavona. Well, yes, you have an extra yud. So I do. No offense to anybody, but it was just a scribal error, and they preserved it because they said, I'm learning from this Sofer. He's 80 years old. I'm going to do it like he did it, and the young 20-year-old is doing it, and he doesn't want to change anything. So they keep preserving the same mistake. So there you go.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Okay, Leonard.
So I got 2 things here.
Yeah.
Number one, I forget which one of the commentators said that Haman had an idol pinned onto his clothing.
Oh, really?
And that's why Mordecai couldn't bow down, because he'd be bowing down to the idol.
Hysterical.
All right. So that's number one. Number 2 is talking about pronouncing things correctly. The first kamatz is actually kamatz katan. So it's ke omram, not ke amram.
Oh, you can't see that on mine. Great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Diane.
So I want to read Benji's note, Benji Siegel's note on Yehudi.
Great.
Yehuda.
Great.
So this comes back from chapter 2, verse 5, when Mordechai is first introduced.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, Jew is an ethnic term, a post-exilic usage. Previously, it was Israelites, based on Judah, Yehuda, the southern territorial name, as in Ezra, recalling the first tribe settling there. But it later included part of the Benjaminite tribe. So earlier, Judean indicated a southern kingdom residence, even in 2 Kings.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that little piece of history. Rachel.
I want to mention two things. First, that is very closely related to what Diane just said.
Yeah.
Is this whole story takes place during the Babylonian exile. And if we remember this, the 10 lost tribes, the only tribes that were taken into captivity were Judah and Benjamin. The other tribes had been lost in previous attacks on Israel, the Assyrian attacks and so on. That's where the 10 lost tribes come in. So the shift in knowledge has a lot to do with which segment of the Israelites were affected here. The other thing I wanted to look at was this statement in verse 2, actually. At least in the English, it's passive. All the king's courtiers knelt and bowed to Haman because the king had ordered that. But we don't have a scene where the king gives that order.
Right. We talked about that. Yeah.
A scene where the courtiers are talking about it. And the courtiers are the one who say, Mordecai, why are you not doing this? So,
well, I think some of that comes from a time, and I only know this from things I've read and movies I've seen, but I think that comes from a time where if you didn't obey the law, it wasn't like the king was going to come and kill you. The courtiers were the ones responsible for whether or not the people were obeying laws, and they could get in trouble if the people didn't, right? So I think there is some, we did talk about exactly that point in verse 2. So it's nice that you brought us back to that. But this idea, I think, of the courtiers doing the talking or being the ones to be sort of in front of the story, so to speak, I think makes a lot of sense in terms of the proximity that normal people would have had to the king. Yeah. Who did I call? Marshall.
It seemed to me that there's end of the sentence.
Yeah.
Which again is Asher Hu Yehudi. That's sort of a rationale for why Haman might want to wipe out the Jews. But apart from a theological perspective, again, I think Robert Alter offers another approach.
Great.
Which really resonates with me.
Great.
As by now you all know. Mordecai may have categorically refused to bow down without offering any religious justification. In that case, his stubborn refusal is compounded by the fact that he has announced his belonging to an ethnic group perceived as different.
So not necessarily that he was Jewish, but that he was just part of something that was different than they were.
That's right. And if he's part of a different ethnic group, there might be other ethnic groups who also might be a threat to this person in power.
Very interesting. Rebecca, then Rebecca. You can decide who goes first.
I was just noticing and thinking about the word choice of Haya Amdu Divrei Mordechai, and that Mordechai's words would stand.
Yes, good.
And he would also stand. So not.
Oh, very good.
Stay standing.
So the standing of Mordecai, not necessarily just of his words, but also that he wouldn't bow down. Very good. Wow, I did not see that. That's great. That's good. That's good. Good writing on someone's part. Yeah, Rebecca.
Going back to what Marshall said about the ethnicity, there's this whole discussion about what an am is, and there's
Yes.
some YouTube things about it. And
Sure.
and I think it might be critical here because basically it's not that it's just a religion, but there's the historical, it's an am. And so there might be a political.
So do you think there's a reason that it doesn't say
behind it.
here?
Well, no, just that, leaning back on what
Marshall
said,
yeah.
that it's not a religious, but more of an ethnic thing that has more of a political sort of back.
Yes, right. Yeah, Larry. In 6 weeks.
I want to say something about what Rebecca just said.
Yeah.
Related to a wonderful drash last week in the Library Minyan by Bobby Noramid, who talked about, at least as I understand it, what it means to be a people, especially in these times. And, I like to step back and look from 30,000 feet at all the verses. So if you go back and you just read the first 8 or 10 verses of this chapter before we get to the poor, before we get to the, it's pretty clear to me, at least. All of your interpretations are all correct, but there is a Peshat interpretation that this is motivating the story, and motivating the story and saying, here's what the king did to Haman, and here's how Mordechai responded. And because he was a Jew, a Yehudi, he was part of these people. That's going to, that Haman is insulted not only by Mordechai, but insulted by all the people.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make a political statement. I actually do. I'm trying to make it a non-political way. To a large extent, I feel that this resonates today in our society, where words have changed. So what it means to be a Jew, or what it means to be a Zionist, and how you get labeled in the modern society, I'll end there.
Sure. Yeah. I want to jump off of not the point that Larry just made, but the idea of words in general, and the words that are being used and the words that are being said. If we look back, and I totally agree with Diane that the pronouns are very difficult. Putting that aside for just 1 second, look at the rest of the words that are being used here. Ke'omram, right? What's the root of that word? Right, so sayings, right? Things that are being said. Velo shama, what's that mean? They were not heard. Vayagidu, what does that mean? In a very different way than amar, perhaps. So why are two different words being used? Lirot, what does that mean? To see, right? So we're getting all of these different ways in which, and my personal guess actually is that part of the reason that this verse can be so confusing is because it's jumping us all around to all these different ways of understanding. First, he's being told something, right? Or they are speaking to him day to day, right? If we're using Mordechai as the subject, he's being asked, or he's being accosted, or he's being interrogated day after day. And he doesn't listen to them. Now, that could mean that he doesn't hear them, which would be a little bit ridiculous, I think, but it's possible that he doesn't hear them, or maybe he doesn't understand them, though from verses previous, we believe that he does understand them in the language that they're speaking. And then they say something to Haman, but interestingly enough, it's this telling. It's like this tattle-tailing. Anyway, rather than just we're going to say something to Haman, right? It's this telling. It's a way of report as opposed to just sharing. And then this lirot hayamdu, though ya'amdu is not a sense, so to speak, there is an idea in kind of the colloquial translation of this that he's standing with his word, right? And I loved Rebecca's interpretation of that. I think that's a great drash on this. But there's something about standing behind what you believe in, and that's also an understanding, right? That's also a way of holding on to something. And then it uses the word higid again here. So it's a very interesting verse when it comes to first of all, as Diane mentioned for us earlier, like who's doing the telling and who's doing the hearing and who's doing the standing, right? We know from context, we think we know from context, but actually if you just read the verse, it's very hard to understand who's doing which pieces. And then it's hard to, it seems confusing. And again, time has elapsed. And so I think that's why all these words are being used in the way that they're being used, of lots of talking and lots of listening and lots of disobeying, right? Which seems to be what we need to understand from this verse. But it's not an easy verse to read, and it's a very crafty way of the author having written out this particular piece of the Megillah. Let's do the Rashi, because, it'd be nice to do one Rashi today. Leonard.
It was said earlier that, or the question was asked, why did they need to tell Haman at all? He could have easily seen for himself that he's not bowing down.
Sure.
But that's not what he was telling them. He was telling them that he's not bowing down
because he's Jewish?
Because he's a Jew. That's the part he couldn't see.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. Yeah, that's a very good read. Yeah. Okay, Rashi, do you have a microphone? Okay, the Rashi.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I know you forgot. 45 minutes ago is when you started reading. So.
Okay. עמדו דברי מרדכי, האומר שלא ישתחווה עולמים.
עולמית.
Sorry, עולמית. הוא יהודי והוזהר על עבודת אלילים. So, right, he's asking the question about why would Mordecai stand by his words or do what he said or not do what he said he wouldn't do.
Or what does that even mean? Hayamdu divrei Mordecai, right?
Stick by his guns.
Right.
Okay. He said that he wouldn't bow down. So the Olamit
ever.
That he would never bow down because he was a Jew, and was I don't know the word Uzhar.
Yeah, he made himself careful.
He's warned. Okay, he was warned against the idol worship.
Yeah, so
it's making it clear what I forget who said it.
Yeah,
no, it was Rebecca, right? Or whoever said last. He was saying it's because I'm a Jew.
Right.
And I won't bow down to.
Yeah. So Rashi's question seems to be, why is it important? Like the Ya'amdu Divrei Mordechai, what was so important about saying that he was going to stand behind his word? And it seems to be that it's important for us to understand that standing behind his word meant, because I am Jewish, I am not going to do this, right? Not just I'm going to be a stick in the mud and not do something that I don't want to do, but rather I have a belief system. Part of my ethnicity is to do things differently than you're asking me to do them. These are my rules and regulations, and therefore I'm not going to do it. And it's because I am Jewish. Yeah? Thoughts, comments, questions? Yes, Larry.
I'll just add.
Yeah.
Something I was going to say before, but obviously Rashi's answering this question is up till now, Mordechai hadn't said anything. So why did we have the phrase, Hamdim Divrei Mordechai, his words, and now I see. So what Rashi is saying is, he told them, right? So there were words. It's just in the Midrash. It's not in the text.
Great. Okay, Rick had his hand up, and then Barry, and then Norm.
I think Rashi is explaining Hayamdu, how long that is. It's not like he's not gonna refuse to bow today, but maybe he'll refuse to bow. Maybe he will bow at some other point. So he's saying Olamit. Nice. He's never gonna do it because of this. So it's not like a temporary thing. So anyway.
Great.
And I do like the standing thing. That's great, Rebecca.
Yeah, so good.
Catching the standing both ways, the double.
Yeah, it's really good. Okay, Barry.
Just Larry, in the verse here, it says, Lirot Divrei Mordechai. So Mordechai actually explained that he was a Jew, that's why he's doing this.
Great. I think Norm had his hand up. And then Leonard.
I think that what Rashi is telling us is that Mordechai didn't simply say, because I'm a Jew. He explained the fact that a Jew is admonished against idolatry. And it's because of the idolatry aspect that he won't bow down. And so he's explaining and educating in a way that I think is important to give him credit for.
Great. Yeah, Rebecca. Oh, sorry, Leonard, and then Rebecca.
So we probably could get this from the context already, but according to our dictionary here, the amad means not just to stand.
Correct.
It also means to continue, persist, stay, remain.
Right. Yeah, thank you. I actually looked up that word right before class, but we ended up on so many other tangents, or not tangents, but in other directions that I didn't bring that up. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Rebecca.
So looking at the word olamit and sort of saying something opposite.
Oh, yeah.
Is that I think in the context of olam can mean time-wise, but also place, right? It can mean everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it might be saying, it might even be hinting that Jews, no matter where they are,
will never do this.
And so
yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. In liturgy, it very often means everywhere or anywhere, right? As opposed to forever. Yeah. Right, which is different. Okay, let's do the fifth verse, because there's actually no Rashi on this, so I won't feel badly if we don't get to the Rashi. I did bring you some other commentaries, but we might not get them we might not get to them today, which is okay. But let's just do the fifth verse just to say that we did. Yes, Norm, you want to read it? Okay, you just need a microphone first. Thank you so much.
Vayar Haman ki ein Mordechai korea umishtachave lo v'yamalei Haman chema.
Okay, this actually. Sorry, translate it.
When Haman himself saw that Mordechai did not bow down or prostrate himself before him, then Haman was filled with rage.
Great. Okay. Were you reading a translation, Norm, or did you add that word at the beginning? You were. Okay. So read the beginning of your translation for us again. When
Haman himself.
Interesting that it says that. Okay. I just was curious. Okay. Thoughts, comments. This actually isn't this is probably why Rashi doesn't have anything on it. This is kind of just recapitulating for us what we assume, that Haman's going to be mad. Mordechai is not bowing. But I would love to hear any thoughts. Yeah, Rick.
As long as you're asking.
Yeah.
Okay, so the trope is kind of nice. It's not fancy or anything, but it's just the same. So Vayar Haman, that he sees, Haman sees, and then Mordechai's not doing it. It's like you could if it was on a stage, you have a spotlight on one guy and a spotlight on the other. But anyway, at the very end, he's filled. What's his reaction? He's filled, and just the word is one word, chema. We don't know what that means yet, but he's just so filled, he can't do anything. It's just, it's like a storm is building up inside his brain, and the trope is just a final kind of chema. It's just one word, and it'd be better if it was one syllable, but anyway, that's the drift.
Sorry, we couldn't make that happen for you.
That's what I'm feeling.
Yeah. So I'll say one thing before. There are quite a few hands that came up in the room while you were speaking. So I just want to say one thing. When we look at verses 4 and 5 together, the question came up quite a few times. Why did the courtiers need to tell Haman anything? Couldn't he see that Mordechai was not bowing down? What does the beginning of this first verse acknowledge? Yeah, Haman knew. He didn't need anybody to tell him, right? So to go back to, I think it was Leonard's point, they probably weren't telling him that he wasn't bowing. They probably were telling him why he wasn't bowing. So when we read the verse before and they were speaking to him day after day, it probably was much more of an interrogation or questions that were being asked of Mordechai rather than you must bow down and just saying that to him every single day, but rather, why aren't you? this will happen to you if you don't, et cetera, and thinking that they might break him to actually do it. And then when he doesn't do it, the report back is that it's because he's a Jew and that he's not going to bow down. And then the next verse is very clear, Vayar Haman, ki ein Mordechai koreh mishtachaveh. And Haman saw when Mordechai was not bowing down or kneeling and then bowing down. Okay, there are lots of hands. Paul, you haven't spoken yet today. Barry, Norm, Marshall, Stevie. And, at 10 a.m., we'll all leave.
A while back, I started reading a book, which unfortunately I can't remember the author or title to, but it was the idea was that Mordecai was actually setting Haman up. He had kind of choreographed the whole thing in his mind previously, that he wanted the whole sequence to happen.
Right.
So the fact that Haman is filled with rage, I think according to if this book was right, which unfortunately I can't remember who it was, he would expect Haman to fly into a rage. That's part of the plot.
It could have been the book that Larry is writing in his brain, because that's Larry's point very often, right? That all of these different things are happening so that there's an outcome that all the characters, but Mordechai specifically, knows that he's setting things up to go a certain way. So maybe it was Larry Herman in a book not yet titled, which is why you don't remember the title. Okay, Barry, go ahead.
So this phrase, yom v'yom, so this is like over...
from the last verse, yeah.
This is over a period of days. So Haman's rage was not like the first time he did this. This is after a period of days, the speaking and not listening, and then the report. Okay, and you've alluded to that this report has to do with more than just, hey, he's not bowing down, but why he's not bowing down. So the rage is not the first day. This is after a period of time.
Correct. Norm.
When I envision Mordecai somewhere near the gate, and a bunch of other people, I'll call them lobbyists, hanging out in the same place. I don't envision that this whole group of courtiers or lobbyists turn to Mordecai in unison and say, why don't you bow down with the rest of us day after day? Rather, one person or another notices it, they approach him, they ask about it. And on subsequent days, other people do this. It gradually gets known. At some point, he tells somebody, well, I'm Jewish and we're not allowed to bow down to idolatry. And he's got this medallion of a false god and I'm not going to do it. But I don't think it's a matter of some giant revelation to them or that it stands out that much, because if somebody inobtrusively is sitting and he might not be noticed that he didn't get out of his chair and bow down, it's relatively unobtrusive. Somebody might even interpret it as being he has a physical difficulty with doing it. So I don't think it's necessarily as sinister as we sometimes see it.
Great. Yeah, there's a picture of there's an illustration of Norm's explanation. Marshall.
I just remember that Robert Alter wrote a book called The Art of Bible Translation, where he explains his whole methodology towards translating. And he has a great sense of how to translate from one language to another. And in this here, where in our text, as it was translated here, of that he was by Moleh Haman Hema, that he was filled with rage. Alter translates that as brimmed with wrath.
Wow, great. I don't know if any of you have ever noticed that what is butter in Hebrew? Yeah. So whenever this verse is read during Megillah reading, Rabbi Klickfeld always says, smooth like butter. I don't know if anybody's ever noticed that, but I just wanted to point that out. Okay, Stevie.
Yeah. So two things. First is these other servants who are, talking. They wanted to lirot about Mordechai, and then they're not the ones who wind up liroding. It's Haman who bayars. But perhaps more interestingly is that when they're talking to Mordechai back in verse 3, it's over et mitzvat hamelech, right? Like the issue is that like you're doing something to the king's prestige, whereas what Haman sees is only about himself.
Right.
Haman sees you're not bound to me.
Good.
He's not concerned with the king's prestige. He's concerned with his own prestige.
Which is actually, that's a great transition, and we'll end on that note. It's a great transition to what's about to happen. The story is going to go from our main characters being, Vashti was with us for a little while, but being Mordechai, the king, Esther, to now really having very little to do with the king and much more to do with Haman and Esther and Mordechai, and then everyone who comes with Haman. But thank you for that. Thank you for that transition, and it's a really good way for us to see that we're moving out of one part of the story and into the next. I will see you all or hear you all from Zoom on Monday at 8:30. And then you'll be back here with Rabbi Kligfeld on Wednesday. See you soon.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.